I'm here today with Dilong Du, Sotiris Athanasoulias, and Chiara Tellerini from the GECKO project. And they are working to rethink AI design with a view to making it more accountable, more transparent, responsible, and sustainable. And crucially, for that last point, investigating the possibilities of AI to be a driver of the sustainable transition. So thank you all for joining me. Let me ask you the first question. So when I read about your project, the first thing that came to mind is, you're working to make AI accountable, transparent, responsible. Why is it not all those things already?
I could start maybe with an input, and then Sotiris and Dilong are welcome to join in if they want to add something or say also their part. So I guess some of the problems with AI now, one of the problems that are with the current, how AI is currently developed are, for example, personal data treatment and privacy issues, which may lead to users having lack of trust, therefore a lack of engagement with AI and with these technologies. If we want to bring GECKO, this project, into the conversation, let's say, I guess one of the main ideas behind GECKO is that of bridging the gaps between different disciplines, like between engineering and social sciences, in order to make artificial intelligence, AI, more transparent, more sustainable, and more responsible. And why is this bridging important? So, of course, we need all disciplines to collaborate into this. We need the technical sciences in order to develop and construct, let's say, AI. But we also need the social sciences because we need deeper understandings of how people engage, interact, and how they understand this artificial intelligence. And I would also like to add that artificial intelligence is usually trained on human data, which may often be biased because they are usually based on, generalized standards that do not take into account, for example, internal differences among social groups into one society, or also differences among different socio-geographical areas. So I guess if we want to develop a better, more transparent, more inclusive, and more just AI, we need to take into account that there can be differences. So what may work for a part of a society may not work or may even harm someone else.
All right, great answer. Do you like to add anything?
Yeah, to add up on Chiara's from a more technical perspective and accountability, transparency of AI. AI and deep learning methodologies are working like black boxes. We train these with some data and we have some predictions, but sometimes it's very difficult to understand how these predictions are inferred. So in the GECKO project, I think it was really important to have this collaboration with the social scientists in order to be able to, during the design and construction of these models, to take into account into the requirements of these architectures, what we have to look into. So in that sense, we think that GECKO was a very nice platform, giving us the opportunity to have this intersectoral collaboration and being able to create transparent and explainable AI models that are aligning also with the needs of the consumers, of the social scientists, and make them, to increase the impact of these solutions.
All right, great.
And I can add a little bit on that by giving an example how, like Chiara says, like most of the AI models are trained based on human data, and specifically, we can see if certain group are missing from the trained data, then the trained AI could make automation decision that potentially harm those users. For example, in the context of smart heating system, we have trained data of many adults, but not so much on small children or pregnant women or older adults. And a scenario could happen when smart heating system would even lower the temperature when the thermal comfort is required even higher for vulnerable group. Or if you have a automation ventilation system in the home to save energy and keep the room have clean air, they may neglect the people who has allergy or breathing problem. So there's always bias in the AI we train, but we also need to keep in mind that we must keep AI, like we said, transparent, accountable, and responsible to prevent potential harm to the users.
All right, fantastic answers. So yeah, I wanted to ask you a lot about something about the negative impacts, but I think you've already given us quite a lot of good examples there. So another key objective of your project is to, once you've achieved this kind of transparent, responsible AI, is for it to be a driver of the sustainable transition and help to achieve European Green Deal goals. What's your vision for that? How could it help to make Europe the first climate neutral continent?
I think I can start answering this question. As part of GECKO, even though I was coming from a technical background and I was mainly focused on the third core package, which was about data interpretation and development of AI models, we understood that one of the most important driving factors for climate change and energy transition is actually the behavior of the end users. So as part of the GECKO and as part of my contribution towards that, we developed technology in order to give feedback to the users and with the aim of them change their behavior in a more kind of sustainable way. So I think that one of the key driving factors in the energy transition is the consumer behavior. Projects in this domain should target in that. It's not only about the technology, it's not only about creating new technology, more efficient technology, EV cars or smarter fridges or whatever. The most important and most impactful factor is the consumers. And I think it's very important when developing ideas, projects, or research proposals is to give a big focus on this side of the energy transition and target to consumer-based solutions.
Yeah, and I can follow up with that. I think we are in the stage of digitalization, even though digitalization starting in from 1990s, and now sustainability transition, the energy crisis happened even before that, around when the first time IPCC was published the scientific consensus on we have to take care of the climate crisis and the energy crisis. And now, as we are entering digitalization, we are seeing that if AI can help us with that. I would say with the research that our project is doing is not just solely focus on energy use, but also the whole life cycle of energy use without also neglecting the user needs. So what I mean by that is that when we are seeing the transitions of sustainability society, we have seen that we try to reduce the energy and try to make renewable energy supply more reliable. And also we need to also consider, okay, the whole life cycle. We cannot, for example, have so many batteries. We actually have researcher in our group researching on how do we charge the electric vehicle. So we don't have to have batteries that needs to be recycled and have tremendous CO2 emissions, but connected to the smart grids. And also, besides the electric vehicles, we also thought about, let's say, the heating system and also the electricity use, and on top of that, I think Chiara can tell us more about why some areas and some group and societies, communities couldn't just go for sustainable transition because their life situations are much more complex than replace all the non-renewable with renewable. Yeah.
Yeah, if I can add also to what, before going to that, I found very interesting that DeLong said about this, the importance of considering the whole life cycle of when it comes to this kind of technologies, because of course, artificial intelligence, also to reply to the question, can help people ideally to reduce their energy consumption. If we think, for example, of households that have solar panels, photovoltaic panels, PVs, they're not home during the day, but they would like to be able to time their washing machine so that it starts and it consumes when they are producing energy with the PVs. So of course, that can be a great help. But at the same time, I find that we never speak enough about this life cycle, because we also need to think, where are the materials extracted? What is the impact of the extraction of the materials on the communities where this extraction happens? And what is the impact, of course, on the environment? And then, as also DeLong mentioned, the problem of e-waste. So all the waste that comes from not being able to recycle these technologies when they don't function anymore. So I think that's always important to keep in mind. And yeah, in my case, I worked with island communities in Ireland, so kind of more remote rural areas. And there it was important to consider, how can we include more remote groups into this energy transition? How can they participate into it? Considering that they have extra challenges when it comes to sourcing certain materials, when it comes to fixing equipment, when it comes to installing PVs and heat pumps and all these things. So every community needs the tools appropriate to their own condition, let's say. And if I can add one last thing, but maybe could be also for later.
No, please go ahead.
I think it's something that from, let's say, the social science work package in the GECKO project, we focused a lot on, is considering that these technologies and artificial intelligence are based on certain societal values, on certain comfort standards and values that are often normalized and taken for granted. If we think, for example, about the temperature that we expect to have in our homes, that is kind of non-negotiable, right? And so we need, in a way, if we want more sustainable, more transparent in our AI, we also need to be able to challenge certain comfort standards that they are normalized, they are taken for granted, but at the same time, they may not be as sustainable. So especially when we think about comfort standards in wealthy countries. So that's another thing to keep in mind, I guess.
Yeah, this excites me. May I add a little few things quickly?
Yeah, please.
What Chiara was mentioning was also because within the GECKO, we have interdisciplinary exchange. And then, so the social scientist was exposed to the technical, the design was expected to, so we were exposed to each other's research field. And what Chiara was mentioning about challenging social norms is also in the discussion of the current this post-growth or degrowth discussion, where we, for example, we are actually, in my humble opinion, we are actually living already in a little bit this utopian phrase where when during the winter we can just wear t-shirt at home. That it's it's a social norm to wear like a few, maybe a sweater during the winter where outside is tremendously snowy. And we have seen the infrastructure have really broke the balance of human rhythm and human nature rhythm. And how can we kindly remind people that we may be able to not just save the energy, but also good for your health, that your body needs to learn to adapt social season changes. So you need to bear a little bit cold, a little bit healthy-wise, in order to not save the planet, but also benefit your health. And then this social norm change is something that somehow we hope that technology can do, but it's beyond the technology mediation we can do. And for example, we cannot tell the island communities who have constant blackouts when the electricity they rely on from the mainland produced from UK delivered to them is not stable in certain time because of the ocean and the wind. And how can we persuade them to not use woods, for example? Like, it's not possible. We have to not neglect user needs and just push the green tag to them, because that's not going to work and user would abandon those technology. That's according to the research as well. Yeah.
All right, these are all really fascinating points that you're raising. Yeah, I know there is a lot of evidence shows, for example, women are less comfortable at the same temperatures as men. That's not normally taken into account, for example, in public buildings, is it? And I'm really interested in what you said earlier, Dulong, about the sustainability of renewable energy, because I live in Spain, and obviously, as you know, we had pretty much a countrywide blackout a few weeks ago. All right, fascinating stuff. So let me ask you a question that's been forming in my mind. Obviously, huge amounts of data needed to sort of provide this feedback to users, to manage these systems. How do you balance, the data processing? We've all heard a lot about the energy used in data centers and the impact on the environment. Going forward, how do you think those could be balanced out, the benefits against the negative impacts?
Yeah, no, I can also start with this question. Like what you just described, it's a huge issue, especially with the rise of AI, the big LLM models that they consume a lot of energy. Data centers, it's also a big issue regarding the sustainability and energy consumption. So in GECKO, we tried to provide a solution and approach to that by employing edge computing approaches. So the idea in the edge computing is that we provide decentralized approaches that they run on small devices on the consumer side. So personally, and the research that me and my research group focused was on developing decentralized solutions in a way that we try to, let's say, make smaller, more efficient AI architectures that will not need to be deployed in centralized infrastructures, but they will be able to be run on the consumer side with the data that are collected on the consumer side. So by employing this type of architectures, we don't need data centers, we don't need to have all this data exchange, and we provide plug and play solutions to the consumers with the use of AI and that will be able to utilize all this data. That will be much more cost effective. It will alleviate GDPR issues with sending all the data. And they are also much more efficient since they don't need, central infrastructures that they consume a lot of energy. And they will be very easily deployable on small devices, on edge devices, on the buildings of the users. So that is an attempt, a growing attempt in the research field of AI, the edge computing and the edge machine learning. And this is what we tried to also employ within GECKO from a more technical perspective.
All right, great. Chiara Dulong, would you like to add anything to that?
I actually don't have, I'm not an expert on this question. I have a thought on the current AI discussion we have among the HCI group, that how can we make user to, when they are using AI, how do we make user be aware of their energy consumption? Because, for example, the chatbots, the large language model requires tremendous water and electricities, and we were mocking that we need to save the AI by save the electricity and water. And what we are doing is that we should inform users that stop saying thank you to ChatGPT so it can save more water when they are using it. So even though these things sound a little bit silly, it actually could save a tremendous of electricity and water. And among GECKO, that's what we are also doing, that all the individuals, if they are really aware of the climate crisis, within their compromise, and if they have benefits also, they could, with some small minor things they can do when they are using AI and consider the AI environmental impact, there's something that they can do very small, like a drop to the ocean, but eventually it can be a tremendous help for the whole picture.
Yeah, I guess like not keeping all our emails, right, is something that we're all starting to, not copying everybody when they don't need to be copied. It's, yeah, like you say, those little things that add up. Okay. All right. So tell me a bit more about your work in the project. Where are we now with regard to, the goal you've been working towards, or this goal of transparent, responsible, sustainable AI? What are the knowledge gaps remaining, or the technology development gaps, and how is your work contributing to closing those gaps?
Shall I start? Or
Yes,
does
go
someone
ahead.
want to go? Yeah, so from my perspective, as I said before, I work with these island communities in Ireland. I work with households that have photovoltaic panels, and I sometimes even heat pumps. And I made some small installations in these households to monitor the energy consumption of each appliance. We gave feedback to the households, like they could monitor the electricity use of their appliances to see if having this feedback not only changed how households related to their energy consumption, but also how they relate and how they use their PVs, their photovoltaic panels, in terms of energy production. I guess in terms of filling the gaps in this research, for me, it was important to collaborate with these remote communities to get their perspective on the energy transition, about the challenges that they experience. It was important to resonate that sometimes it's not only about adopting new technology, adopting renewables, for example, but it's also about phasing out fossil fuels. There were many households that had to rely still on coal, on turf, on wood. So they were burning these materials, but because they had no other choice, like DeLong mentioned before, in case of blackouts from affecting the subsea cable that connects the islands to Ireland, to the mainland, in case of troubles in getting a skilled workforce from the mainland to fix whether it is a heat pump or whether it is the PV system. So of course, households had to still rely on fossil fuel-based sources. So the big question there was, okay, how do we change this? How do we challenge this? Can it be changed in any ways? Because, yeah, we often think transitioning to a renewable system, we think mostly to bringing in new technologies, but then we need to think about phasing out from old ones as well. And just generally, how do you involve people in using these apps, in reducing their energy consumption? There were many people that maybe didn't find the app useful in terms of reducing their energy consumption or getting more information about how much their washing machine uses, but that would have been better informed in case of a better availability from the projects, in terms of sending people to explain how this works, sitting together in groups with the community, engaging people more on a personal level than on the phone, for example. And yeah, so I think my main takeout is focusing on these remote communities and bring their knowledge, their learning experience into this global energy transition, because I think, yeah, we can all learn a lot from those.
Great. Sotiris, you wanted to say something, I think?
Yes, actually, you asked like everybody from us like to share their experiences, right? So I can share about my research and about the data gaps that I tried to fill as part of this GECKO project. So as part of our research, we identified two main gaps. One was the data, that in order to be able to create generalizable AI models, you need to have representative data sets that cover all different areas. And energy and energy consumption is a very context-aware problem in terms that users, for example, in UK have a totally different consumption behavior than users in Mediterranean. So in order to alleviate and fill this gap, we focus specifically on the Mediterranean use case, and we tried to create a new data set that covers the energy consumption patterns of the people in Mediterranean, that they use specific devices like air conditions or water boilers, as you also know in, I guess you're doing the same in Spain, and also the existing appliances have a different operational states and consumption patterns because of the climate differences. Another note that we also try to incorporate in this data is to have representative data from different groups. For example, houses with from family houses, families with different economic backgrounds, in order to be able, to cover all these data profiles, and then being able to train data that they will be able to generalize among all the different use cases. So the one pillar of my research focused on this, on the data gaps, how data are very important, especially in the domain of energy that has so many different variances among places and among different social and economic backgrounds. And the second pillar focused on the adoption of AI. As you also mentioned in the previous question, energy and deployment and data centers are all factors that actually is a burden to adoption of AI technology. On one hand is the economic, environmental impact of the AI. On the other hand is the data and the privacy issues that arises from sending your personal data and consumption data into like data centers, especially with the consumption data. We did also a really interesting workshop as part of the GECKO, that we had the house with the consumption data of the house. We try to identify what is happening in this house. And you can, we found out that by only having access to consumption data, you can infer so many information about if someone is in the house, how many people live in the house, about the patterns of someone. So consumption data are really, really, sensitive data. So in order to overcome this issue of adoption, of overcoming the economic barriers and the GDPR issues, we developed this decentralized edge computing approach, as I described earlier, in order to be able to deploy all the system in-house, and by doing so, reducing the costs and also avoid sending data to central infrastructure. And this way, we avoided, data leakages and GDPR issues. So yes, that are the two main pillars that my research and my PhD tried to fill the gap.
All right, great. That's a nice success story as well. DeLong, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah. So in my field, regarding human-computer interactions, we mainly tackles on the innovations of user interface design. What that means is that we see the approach that we try to fill out the gap and try to make the situation better is to deal with emerging technologies such as the wearables, like something you wear, like a smart watch that can detect your skin temperature and your heart rate, and regulates your room temperature, for example, or augmented reality, some of the smart glasses that is starting to emerge. When you can see for example, like a small smoke to tell you the air quality is not that good, or the room is way too hot, that before human body could properly react to it, or some of the human-like smart home agent, basically your house can talk to you. And you will see, we try to understand users and then the interface they use them. And then if the interface makes sense to them, for example, you may have noticed that not all the users are comfortable using smartphone or smart watch. For example, I wouldn't give a smartwatch to older adults because many may find the screen way too small to control. And I would maybe give, rather than a GUI, the graphic interface that in the older generation having hard time to interpret it, we can give them like more of a human-like agent, like that talk to them, that use their mental model. Let's say, rather than saying stuff like, my GPS location has detected you left the house. I will turn down the room temperature to this degree. The agent could be talking to the user like, since you left the house, should I turn down the heating system? And then surprisingly, you will see keep the human in the loop, could prevent energy waste, or energy discomfort happen because like, oh no, keep the room on because I have my baby at home. I will return really quick. I was just taking the trash out, for example. So besides those technologies, we also need to keep in mind that not all the public can afford AI branded technology. And we also need to think about what are the coping strategy or some of the more affordability ones. Because to be honest, regarding energy, users who has most finance constraints would be the most sustainable. And even they are bearing discomfort at home already. And what do we do is that we compensate them with the technology or material such as you can put some boards behind the radiator to increase the attenuation. So that's something really cheap they can do, or they can have some indoor plants to prevent bad air quality. They don't have to open the window that often, for example. And all of those deals with our research approach that has been extensively established on social practice theory and eco-feedback design. How do we compensate or empower human users with something that technology can do and human cannot do? And also at the same time, we need to help the technology to understand what human can detect and the machine cannot. And this becomes a kind of like we try to figure out how can we help the human user with the technology to become part of the ecosystem, to match their energy consumption rhythm with the nature rhythms. So that's how the stage of the research right now in our field.
Okay, great. All right. So I'm hearing you talk a lot about sort of end users and, you know, challenges of adoption, challenges of sort of acceptance perception. There are other people involved in this sustainable transition, aren't they? Which are policymakers, businesses, innovators. What do we need from them? You know, what should they be doing to make this vision a reality and to support this sustainable transition?
Yeah, we actually read the questions together before the meeting, and I am the one taking care. But let me think about what I was wanted to say. Maybe you want to give me a few moments. What did I wanted to say? Let me read the question again. What role do policymakers, business, and innovators play in supporting the development of responsible AI, and how can we? And main challenges. Oh yeah, okay. Yes. So I think there is a tremendous knowledge gap between the policymaker and even the innovators with end users. Because you have seen already some of the green policy that has a good initiative doesn't play out well. For example, this is a little out of German GECKO, our project context regarding energy. But for example, when policymakers are requiring farmers to keep in mind about the sustainability regarding producing the chicken or the eggs, and then this would have backlash on how they survive in the market. And that's why they neglect the sustainability or the green policy they have been made, and the negotiation has been happening. And what also happens is that we have seen some discussion regarding from international transports of products and to like local products. How do we deal with the policy here, anti-globalization, or should we shift everything to local? Do we deal with TAF? So even though we are researchers dealing with users, dealing with technology, dealing with how do people use the technology, but we also cannot just be very blindly believe that our solution will save, like rather than like a top-down approach, always have this bottom-up approach. So we start to think about, after this research that we exchange our result, we start to think about our research rather than understanding the existing research. We first understand what the users is struggling, rather than going to a household saying that you need to save more energy, you need to not charge your car during the day, but during the night. We try to figure out, okay, how do you charge your car? How do you save energy? Do you want to save energy? And then we understand their practice first. And then we think about, okay, is there something we can do to make the situation better? So I think that's a little bit time consuming, but very important for a policy or innovation to succeed. Yeah.
Yeah, that people first approach, right? Tech enabled, but people first. Okay, do either of Sotiris, Chiara, you want to add to that?
Yeah, like a very, very quick note from my side regarding the business and innovation side. I think it's very, very important for these stakeholders to try to stay updated with the state of the art and the research side in order to incorporate stuff that we are doing in their research. So I think it's very important in similar initiatives like GECKO to embed like a two-way communication between the researchers, the EU consortium, and actual business and innovation stakeholders in order to, okay, research is very good, we are doing great stuff, we publish papers, but it's very, very important, to embed all this research into real products in order to have real impact. So my note, my takeaway from all this experience is that it's very, very important, not only the research side, but the creation of a bridge between research and business innovation stakeholders in order to help them better understand the landscape and in this way to promote the solutions in real world.
Yeah. I relate very much actually to what both Sotiris and DeLong said, and I would like to add, well, especially when it comes to the importance of interconnecting policy side, industry, and academia, there has to be a collaboration in order that for each sector to have their impact, because each sector is important into this transition. But at the same time, I would also like to mention policy-wise, it may be challenging to have only these one-size-fits-all approaches where one policy is applied nation-wide. We saw that artificial intelligence, these technologies can reinforce existing inequalities. So there are sectors of society or certain geographical areas that have, for example, not easy access to basic energy services, let alone some AI advanced technology. So I guess it's important for policymakers to really take into account the differences that they have in their own country, in their own territory and localities to, for example, I was working with an NGO on these island communities, and for them it was very important to bring the research that GECKO is doing when they apply for grants, to have workers from the mainland when they apply for grants to have renewables installed, because they need more support in certain ways due to their remoteness. So all these things, I think, should be taken into account.
All right, that's great. Thank you. Okay, so we've covered a lot here. Really fascinating stuff that you've shared about the challenges and the learnings and the opportunities. Before we close, is there anything else that any of you would like to add? Is there any key questions that I haven't asked you? No?
I think you covered everything
we've covered quite a lot. All right, so with that, thank you very much, DeLong, Chiara, and Sotiris from the GECKO project for joining me today to explain, how they're moving AI forward to be more responsible, sustainable, and transparent. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks to you.
Thank you very much.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.